So it is May 2021. I'm going to do a wrap up of my last couple of months of reading. Just kind of quickly go through some of the books. Some of the books I've made reviews of. Some of the books maybe I won't make reviews of. They'll just be our little secret here on my reading wrap up. First one, which I've actually just kind of finally gotten around to posting the review of, was The Biggest Bluff, How I Learned to Pay Attention, Master Myself, and Win by Maria Kornikova, author, PhD psychologist, PhD in psychology, television presenter, kind of a self-help book in a strange way of her learning how to be championship level poker player, but also very much kind of a book of dealing with kind of improving herself, working on some of her own limitations of examining being a female and how females are kind of socialized to be a certain kind of act a certain way, and how that can get in the way of something like poker, where it's a very kind of combative sport in a lot of ways, also a very analytical sport. So that was an interesting book. She is a writer in the New Yorker, so you know that the writing is going to be kind of very top flight stuff. Definitely worth a read, very well paced, and actually interested me, and I have no interest in poker. Next on my list, probably Butter Honey Pig Bread. This was by Francesca Ecoesi. Really great book that I found from Poptimist, and then through Canada Reads, which is a competitive thing here up in Canada, where a bunch of books are defended by various kind of semi Canadian celebrities, in which case most Canadians probably have no idea who they are. At least I didn't for the most part. This was a really, really great book about two twin sisters and their mother, and was a really great pairing with Freshwater, another book that I had read about a year ago from another that I think is Nigerian American. This is Nigerian Canadian author Ekwesi, which deals with kind of like mental illness, with kind of ruptures in the family, and food. You should really go and see Onyx Pages, Nirji at Onyx Pages, her review of this book, because while I really enjoyed this book, for her, this was a book, she said, like, this was a book that was written for me and I have to talk about it. And I will definitely put a link down below to her glowing, effusive review of this book. Really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed her review of the book as well. I did the Gangster. I did a whole series of the Gangster by Scott Sigler, which is book number 6 in his Galactic Football League series, which is sports football combined with science fiction for like 700 years in the future, where football is now played by various species that's all holding together this kind of this empire, the Creterakian Empire, which definitely has kind of echoes in empires in the past of human history. And I have no interest in football, but Sigler is really able to sort of edit the experience of a football game, give you that thing of like, the great football, the great sports broadcasters are the ones who can tell a good story and make you care for people, care for the players, even if you maybe don't care about the sport. And, Sigler really harnesses that, the sports story, the sports movie. I love a good sports movie, even though I'm not really much of a team player. Surprise. That's another fun installment in that series. You can actually get, like, the first book in the series, The Rookie, for free, either as an ebook or as audiobook. And Sigler himself does an amazing voicing of all the characters. There's the Sklorno, who are Quentin Barnes. Quentin Barnes being the human passer guy. Man, I know my sports. The human quarterback who is the main protagonist of all this series. Next, I've got it here as next is Beeswing by it's a memoir by Richard Thompson from Losing My Way and Finding My Voice, 1967 to 1975. It's a memoir of this time. Richard Thompson was a founding member of Fairport Convention, which is a big kind of English folk group, kind of well known for bringing kind of English folk tradition into kind of the folk rock area. Definitely, in a realm when, especially when he was starting out, where it was very much pop music and kind of popular music was getting really dominated by the Americans. This is like really important, kind of an English voice in there of bringing that kind of tradition to bear on this and bringing his own voice. Thompson is a very discreet memoirist. He does not really go into his personal life, does not particularly, tell stories out of school about his the fellows that he went up with. This is much more of a musician's biography, much more of giving you kind of the hints of his own spiritual journey. At the very end here, there's his conversion to Sufism. I think it's Sufism is what he would say, and it then quickly in an afternote, like how he kind of fell back out of that again. It's probably discreet to a fault. This might be a book that's more of interest to Richard Thompson fans themselves rather than kind of a wider thing. There's a little sense where it reminds me of T.E. Lawrence's The Seven Pillars of Wisdom. Just that bit of kind of reserve, kind of quietness of how Brits of a certain kind of generation will express themselves. It's nowhere near the heights of T.E. Lawrence. That Seven Pillars of Wisdom is a classic. This is probably more of an kind of an interesting curio of that time. Then I can go on to The Butterfly Lampshade by Amy Bender. This is her American author. This is her first novel in about 10 years. I don't know if she's probably busy in short stories and stuff like that. In the meantime, I haven't read that first novel. This one, kind of the relationship between a mother and a daughter, how that relationship was ruptured very early on due to a mother's kind of a mental breakdown. This is sort of, it goes back and forth, centering around the time of that rupture of the adult daughter, building basically a memory tent for herself on her apartment thing and going into it and remembering and kind of going back and forth and remembering that time period. It's a very kind of delicately done, very, very intimate look at this. For my taste, I read through it kind of worried that it was going to get twee on me, that it was going to become too delightfully eccentric. And I think it for my taste, it kind of stayed on the side of actually kind of addressing and working with this stuff without kind of, I just want to wrap you up in a warm, fuzzy kind of blanket of coziness or anything like that. I think it kept it determinedly on a small scale, and it kept it honest in that. So that's Butterfly Lampshade. Next, probably Detransition Baby by Tori Peters, trans writer. This was a book that was highly recommended by Sean the Book Maniac, and follows three women, a trans woman, a trans woman who's no longer at the point at the start of this book a woman, and that formerly trans woman's girlfriend, and it's their kind of really interesting, really complicated relationship. I'm a cis dude, and I found this book really great because just kind of showing possibilities and just sort of the messiness of human relations and of human sexuality, and the fucked up way we treat people and how we keep people in boxes. This is a book where ostensibly the straight guys in this book are there's definitely a lot of the ones that, especially that the trans women are come into contact with and have relationships with, are abusive assholes who are obviously working out their own kind of rage and their own kind of privileges and stuff like that on these trans women, while these trans women these women are trying most determinedly to kind of forge out a kind of a way of being that's going to allow them to survive, that's going to allow them to actually be something other than just like, I think there's a thing in the book of like, a trans woman, you're either you're a sex worker, or you're God, I can't even remember what the other one was, but it's like, it was incredibly circumscribed. And it's like, there's that sense now that, hey, wow, you know what? The world can open up and you can actually be more. And, I think very selfishly as a straight cis guy, I can also see that with feminism, with kind of gay liberation in general, with kind of the hopefully in the face of horrific backlash, both from our perspective in North America and in the UK, that opening up of actual possibilities for trans people, both trans men and trans women, that actually opens up possibilities for myself. Maybe not being left in this incredibly narrow little field of what it means to be a straight guy, a cis straight guy, or whatever the fuck I am. It was an exciting book for me in that, and I that's how I can speak to it, and how I can say, wow, that was an exciting book, and thank you, Sean, for recommending that book. The next book, In the Labyrinth of Drakes, The Memoirs of Lady Trent, #4 by Mary Brennan. This is a fantasy series. It's set on a very kind of an alternate Earth where there are dragons and stuff like that. But it's very much, it very much gives the vibes, especially of Lady Trent herself, Isabel, as a very much kind of a Victorian lady, and she's a Victorian lady scientist who, is one of these women who's gone off and, explored the world, pursued scientific study in the face of her home country basically refusing to kind of recognize her as a scientist. And that's her field of study, is dragons. And I think some people who come to the series are disappointed that it isn't dragons and fire breathing and stuff like that. It's like, no, this is much more unique than that, much more interesting than that, in that it's more of like a scientific story. It's like Victorian science and politics and a little bit of romance in there. But it's very determinedly kind of a memoir thing of that, versus there's adventures in it, but it's much more, what scientific problems can I work out here and stuff like that, and how can I maneuver the politics and the sexual politics of all that, whereas you can see kind of building stuff of like, we're going from Victorian time into like a World War time and stuff like that in that thing. So I reading this series quite slowly, but it's highly recommended if you're kind of a little bit of a science geek. I think more than a fantasy. Well, if your best thing is you like both, and then you're happy that way. Let's talk about Don Quixote. I did 2 videos on Don Quixote, so there's not too much more I need to say here. Spanish writer Miguel De Cervantes. I won't even say the other name there. For part 1 published in 1605, second part published in 1615. So this was my slow read since March. I really, really, really enjoyed this. I really came to have great affection for Don Quixote, for Sancho, and just really impressed by how, while there's like a lot of slapstick and kind of silliness in here, there's also just a lot of subversiveness. There's a lot of commentary on how the Spanish were treating Muslim or Muslim descended population in this book. Just the nature of reality, the nature of belief, the nature of just sort of morals. It's like, Don Quixote is this character who's decided to take up the example of the errant knight to right wrongs, and I can't help but thinking of this is the semi kind of a Christ creature who at the end of I won't talk about the end because I have my massive spoilers. I put massive spoilers on the end of that video because I didn't want anyone to watch it, because there's massive spoilers of this book that's like over 400 years old. But yeah, and to enhance my experience of reading Don Quixote, I decided to read some chivalric tales. The first of that being the first and probably the one that I think I'm going to enjoy the most is Tarrant LeBlanc, Tales of the White Knight by Jonat Motorel, which was published posthumously in 1490, and it gets mentioned as, I think it's one of the priest's favorite novels when they're burning poor Don Quixote's library at the beginning, because Don Quixote's been driven crazy by reading all this chivalric nonsense, and him deciding that everything is real, that all the books he's read are real. So yes, Tarrant LeBlanc, this chivalric knight who saves the Byzantine Empire and battles basically without mercy, butchering, killing in great heroic fashion the Muslim invaders, the Turks and anyone of practicing the heathen thing. It's like these are completely others. It's a very there's a screwed up romance in there. This is like, wow, this shows otherness, things of just kind of otherness, things of just the attitude towards women and consent is fucked up in this book. But it's one cohesive story. The other one I'm still reading at the moment. I won't go into that. It's Amadeus of Gaul, which I'm reading I'm reading a older translation of it, and wow, that is kind of rough going. I was very lucky with this one. This is Robert S. Rutter, who made his translation available on I think it's on Gutenberg. I'll put the thing down below. But it's a really kind of flowing, fluid translation of the work. Now it is abridged, which I'm sure will shock and appall many of you, though it seems to have, they've made it like, much smaller by pulling out all the treaties and sermons and stuff that I probably would have wanted to skim through anyways, even though I know I'm supposed to bitterly want to just read through all the stuff. It's like, no, I just want to read the story and the really messed up love story in that book. So yeah, that was Tarrant LeBlanc. And I also read Salman Rushdie's Quixote. Just finished that, and I'm still kind of formulating my ideas on that. But that was actually a great companion to Don Quixote, because Rushdie there is reimagining Quixote as, what if somebody today believed in everything that they consumed in media? And funnily enough, in an age where you have people who do seem to believe anything that they are told, that is not as much of a charming laugh riot as it would be. There is in Quixote, you can argue that it's a world where there's a whole ton of people who believe everything they're told, and what horrible consequences that has on the world. It's like that's the striking thing of, you think about with Don Quixote. This is a time when still, Christianity, Roman Catholicism, but there's been the division. But it's like there's one kind of there's a mediated sense of what the world is. The church is in charge of interpreting reality. It's all fixed. It's all one thing. And Don Quixote kind of comes into this and slightly messes things up by being the sole person. But now we're in an age where everything is fragmented, and it's apparently impossible to just believe anything, to believe everything. And that makes for a really, really interesting world, and a really interesting re-examination of Quixote. And also Rushdie gets to indulge in all the metafiction, because in Don Quixote, there's the first part gets published, and then Quixote meets characters in the second part who've read the first part of the book, and they've also read a pirate. Well, I don't know if it'd be considered a pirate, a false Quixote that has been published, that actually Cervantes learned about as he was reading part 2, and then incorporated in the book as a part of the metafiction. It's like one of these things. I was listening to a lecturer talk about Quixote, and it's like one of those things you have to invent. He would have had to invent if it hadn't actually happened in real life. So yeah. So that was really a good corrective of like thinking of how charming Quixote is, but then, oh God, we live in a world that's filled with Quixotes, and that's not so much of a great thing. And here, let's end off with my biggest, most controversial hot take. I'll bury it here at the very end in hopes that Brandon Sanderson fans don't find out about it, which is I listened to the 57 plus hours of The Rhythm of War, which is number 4 in Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archives, a thing that I think is going to be 5 gigantic, and I mean like 1,000-page plus books for part 1, and then another 5 gigantic books for part 2 of this entire Stormlight Archives thing. So we're 4 of 10, and wow, this is I guess high fantasy. It's another world. I don't know how separated it is. He's got a whole Cosmere universe. And it was a book that needed homework. It is a light adventure, not light adventure. It's an adventure, highly constructed fantasy world of fantasy that I was like, oh God, I read the first 3 novels and like a novella like 2.5 years ago or something like that, and I was like, I don't remember very much. I couldn't remember very much. It's like, oh God. So I watched a couple of videos trying to kind of give me the story so far. And some of that stuck, and some of that stirred some memories. And I went, oh, okay, screw it. I'm just gonna read it. I'll let it wash over me. And I was completely lost for the good first while, completely lost. And I probably never did catch up entirely. It's one of these books where I think it's just like I think it lost my interest. I think it's so involved in its own kind of very complex inner story that you just kind of go, meh, I'm not interested anymore. And you kind of, I just let it wash over me. There's some of the characters, there's angsty Kaladin, guy who's got PTSD, who he and Shalin, who has what seems to be kind of a multiple personality situation going on. They've both had these kind of issues before in earlier novels. It's one of these things where you think, could someone a different author with different aims could write a slim volume that would give me this kind of a story, and you'd be done. Whereas Brandon Sanderson is, I'm making this. I mean, I don't know if it's the first 5 novels in this will kind of incorporate their story, but it's like, I felt like, okay, I've done Kaladin before. Him struggling with the kind of the things of violence and, and of guilt, over survivor's guilt of not saving everyone. It's like, I feel like you dealt with this story already, and now you're doing it again. And then, Shaolin, her own kind of psychological breaks. It's like, I'm just exhausted by it. It's one of these books that I'm perfectly willing to say is really, really well written. Brandon Sanderson isn't like a prose, this isn't super dense. That would just kill everyone if it was. He is somebody who's like, I can write a plane of glass that you can use the text, plane of glass, you can look through it and you get the story. And he does that really well. And that is a talent in itself. Not a lot of authors who are high flown literary stuff. It's like they have to write small books because no one would have the patience for them to be writing like 1,000-page novel, much less 10,000 page novels, all going to one story. But it just kind of goes on and on from my perspective. So, and it's one of those things of, once a story is told, for me, I can't keep it in my head. I can't keep a story like this in my head for that long. And it's like, I can't remember if you've been going on for so long that it's like, I can't remember what the beginning was, so that when you get to a climactic end, it doesn't have any resonance because I've forgotten the beginning. That's probably where I just kind of go, you know what? There's some Brandon Sanderson I like, but it's short Brandon Sanderson, which, that's fine. He's going to be pretty busy with these. Maybe every once in a while he'll for Brandon Sanderson, a short story is like a 400-page novel. That's a short story for Brandon Sanderson. That's probably what I'll confine myself from now on. I probably will not come back to this series. I know I'm missing a lot, but it's not written. It's written for people who love gigantic series, and that can somehow keep all this stuff in their head. I do not know how they can do that. The fact that I can't, that I have to be like, oh God, I'd have to have a wiki page open for me at all times, really takes away. It makes it feel like homework for me. So apparently I needed to get that off my chest, and there's my reading wrap up. That brings us relatively up to the present. I'm reading Stoner at the moment. I'm reading The Rivers of London, and that's going well. They're short little novels of only 200 or 300 pages long, hardly anything at all, and I'm happy with that at the moment. So yeah, that's my reading wrap up for. What are we going to pretend? We're going to say it's May. March, April, May. My March, April, May roundup. There. Super organized. All right. More videos later.